Good afternoon, and welcome to Jeff and the Rabbi. You know, I must admit, this whole Hollywood sex abuse scandal is really depressing me. Everyone who is anyone in Hollywood has been spending countless hours of their free time sexually harassing every young starlet or star that even walks past their trailer. It seems that if you want to be somebody in the entertainment industry today, you have to have more notches on your molestation bedpost than Rosie O'Donnell has on her extra-large extender belt. And here I am, a huge internet talk show host on a major rabbinical show, and our casting couch is as untried as Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential victory speech.
So may it remain.
And so may it remain. Yeah. If I would have known that my only chance of finally getting my star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame was sexually tormenting employees, I would have complimented cameraman Ken more often on his Sansabelt comfort waist pants with a stretchable elastic waistband. But now that success secret is out of the bag, I'm afraid I'm just a little too late. And not just about me, but there seems to be one thing that I have noticed, I don't know if you have the same, something in common with all the Hollywood harassers, at least most of them. Here's a list of their names and see if you can guess what it is.
To date.
Yeah. And this is some of them. I'm going to see if you can guess what that commonality is. We got Harvey and Bob Weinstein, Louis C.K., Brett Ratner, James Topak, Mark Halperin, Michael Oreskes, Steven Seagal, Jeremy Piven, Dustin Hoffman, and of course, let's not forget the old-time favorites, Woody Allen and Roman Polanski. Have you guessed it? I have. They're all Jewish.
Yeah, I don't know. Is Polanski Jewish too?
Polanski's Jewish. I looked it up. I looked it up just to make sure.
Wow.
He's a Polish Jewish man.
Okay, got it.
But here's the thing. I can't blame these poor Cheisman. It's almost unfair for the progressive types these days. How can you chide them for not knowing the moral rules when we change them almost monthly? A couple of years ago, men were being knocked because they were displaying too much toxic masculinity. And now, as long as I'm sporting my Lululemon romper with a push-up bustier, I'm considered as much of a chick as Dolly Parton. How are we supposed to figure out what is up and what is down? So, you would think, this is the important part, you would think that us Jews, since we're the chosen ones, that God would have at least come up with some kind of manual for how we are supposed to act, and so we don't get confused. You know, maybe like a book, or maybe perhaps 5, all neatly written on some old parchment, so that we could take it seriously. If we only had something like that, it would surely have stopped our brethren from acting so unrighteously. But alas, since we don't have that type of guidance, I guess we just need to wait for the next cool trend to be our new moral compass. I only wish that the rabbi here could come up with some crazy idea for us Jews to help us convoy us through life's convoluted complexities.
Right.
Now, with that softball introduction,
yes,
Rabbi, what do we do?
I do have a solution, but I'd like to first describe the problem a little bit better.
Okay.
Because we all know that there's a problem. All these guys are out there, and they can't seem to keep their hands and the rest of themselves to themselves, right? And this is not just a problem in Hollywood, because the truth is, it's a problem in stores and in workplaces all around the world. It's just Hollywood is the high profile, and everyone hears about it. And as a matter of fact, the truth is, I really have no pity on all these Hollywood starlets that are being abused. What I do have pity on is the poor lady that's trying to get a job in a McDonald's somewhere, and the boss is expecting something from her. That I feel bad about. The Hollywood starlet, I don't, because if she won't give him the favor, why is she not going to give him the favor? Why did she not want to do something for Weinstein? Well, what did she really want? She wanted Weinstein to give her a job so she could be in a movie, and in the movie she could portray someone doing something in front of millions and millions of people that she doesn't want to do with Weinstein. So what was the problem? The problem is that she doesn't want to do it with Weinstein because there's not millions of people watching. So, she doesn't mind disrobing in front of millions of people. It's just she doesn't want to disrobe in front of Weinstein. So
have you seen Weinstein?
Yeah, I've seen Weinstein.
Okay, so maybe that has something to say. But anyway, I'm just...
I've gotten a bit of pity on. But the people that are out there in the workplace are just trying to make a living. trying to get a job. I don't care if she's trying to get a job at McDonald's or trying to get her PhD reviewed or something like that. Those are the people that I really feel bad about. But our society has painted itself into a corner. When you're telling Mr. Weinstein that when he's got the starlet or Mr. Politician or Mr. Power Person, whoever it might be, and he's got the weak person in his grasp, you're telling him not to do what he wants. You're telling him to abstain, right? You're telling him to abstain.
Absolutely.
Now, it's really interesting. When we realized that there was a problem with our youth, and many people suggested some years ago, abstinence is what we should teach our children. And they said, no, you can't teach them abstinence. You have to provide for them birth control. Don't teach abstinence. Well, is it a surprise that after a generation of not teaching abstinence, you find that there are people out there who can't abstain? How do you like that? They actually think that they're not even supposed to try to abstain because no one said you're supposed to try to abstain.
Or that you're not capable. We've accepted that you're not capable of abstaining.
You can't abstain.
These are your natural feelings and you can't abstain from them.
As a matter of fact, let's take it even a step further. Don't we live in a naturalistic society that views people as merely evolved creatures? And certainly you would have to say that the guy that is the most predatory about spreading, if you're coming from an evolutionary perspective, the animal that can conquer the most females is the one that's going to propagate the most, right? True. And certainly then he would produce more offspring that would conquer more females who would propagate even more. So therefore you'd have to say, if you're taking that approach, we've been hardwired to impress ourselves upon others.
That's true.
And that's just the facts. You can't do anything about that either, can you? I mean, after all, aren't we really just a bunch of animals? Then, let's take another step in our society. We've got something called the pornography industry, which is so all-pervasive. It occupies the majority of the internet traffic, right? Every kid has access to it. We're not putting any restraints on people. China, by the way, China doesn't allow it, but we don't have censorship in our country, so we are awash in this.
We're a little bit more progressive.
And what does that portray? It portrays human beings, most particularly women, as being nothing more than objects. I just heard someone on the radio today on the way over here, until people start looking at women as commodities. Well, there is a huge industry in this country that portrays women as commodities. Matter of fact, as she's saying, until people start looking at women as commodities, I glanced up at the billboard that I was driving by, and I glanced at the bus that I was driving next to, and I glanced over there and I said, women aren't commodities. That lady on the side of the bus looks like a commodity.
Right.
That lady is trying to sell a commodity with herself as a commodity. What's going on? So here's our society that turns women into commodities until we stop viewing them as commodities. Maybe if we found a society where they don't put pictures of women up as commodities, where they don't allow women to be used as their bodies to be used as pitchmen, where they don't use women to walk down runways and prance up and down a runway. What is everyone looking at when they see these pictures? So the society is two-faced. The society is on the one hand saying, women are commodities, you can't control yourself, do everything you want, you're nothing more than an animal, an evolved ape. And then it says, but don't touch, don't abuse, show restraint, show respect. The society is phony from the bottom to the top, and all that we're getting right now is just a product of a phony society.
Well, I get what you're saying, but then what do you suggest? I mean, you're not suggesting putting everybody in burqas, are you? I mean,
So here we come. We have school systems, for example, where I've sent my children to school. They are in sexually segregated schooling.
Right.
Now, what's the purpose of sexually segregated schooling? Especially, let's say you've got little kids, kindergartners. Why would you put boys and girls in separate kindergartens?
Right.
I mean, after all, they haven't, they're not at a point where they're going to be sexual at such a young age.
Correct.
The reason is because you don't want to train them to have a sense of familiarity with each other, to be able to touch each other, to be able to have fights with each other, to collaborate with each other and do things together, like buddy, because later on, when they start to grow up, then you try to instill a sense of barriers between them, that there are certain barriers. You can't cross lines. That's off limits. That's a girl. You're not allowed to touch that girl. You're literally not allowed to touch that girl. Now, if she gives you permission, that's a whole different story. But the starting point is you can't touch.
Right.
You can't touch, and don't even presume that you can touch. That is absolutely forbidden, and they've been trained that way because they're over there. That is, of course, when what's his name? When Mike Pence presumes to institute safeguards in his life, then everyone screams their head off at him. But I'll tell you the truth, and this all goes back to the phoniness and the duplicity of the entire society. When a powerful man took advantage of a young girl,
Right.
and he was very powerful, and she was very powerless.
I know what you mean.
And the powers to be did not come to Monica Lewinsky's defense.
No one
They
did.
threw her to the dogs.
Bimbo
At that point-
eruptions.
Right.
Bimbo as it was her
Yeah.
fault, and
At that point, they gave up any claim to decency or to propriety, and they said it was okay. When our guy was doing it, it was okay. But now these guys are doing it, we don't like it. So we got a different approach. And our approach says that, first of all, human sexuality is a natural tendency that must be very, very strong, maybe one of the strongest of all human traits and tendencies that there is. And it must be guarded, and it must be contained. And if you're going to do that, you've got to start from the very beginning. You've got to teach people that you have the ability to restrain yourself, that you don't do everything that you feel. As a matter of fact, I've long contended that take away the birth control, that giving the birth control just says, I can do whatever I want, and there really won't be any repercussions.
Right.
I can have my way and have no repercussions and nothing to ever deal with. So we say, you can't touch that woman, and you better not even dream of touching that woman until which time, as she gives you permission, she will decide when she wants to make herself available to you, and she will then decide if she wants to accept your advances or not. And we say that you'll do that only when you, in return, make a commitment to that person. So when people want to get married, when they want to make a commitment to each other, then they can do things like that. If not, they stay apart. So we have a lot of restrictions. We have restrictions against fraternizing in the workplace. We don't mingle. We believe in all kinds of separateness. And this is one of the objections that has long existed in the state of Israel about religious men being in the army, because they have it's a very integrated army, and men and women are together, and the religious people, and it has been like that since its inception.
Right.
And many of the religious people say we can't function in that type of environment. Take the women out, maybe a different story, but if the men and the women are going to have free access to each other and free access to each other's lodgings and free access and spend time together all day, well, I'm sorry, we can't function like that, because then you'll end up having these things. And if there is an episode of harassment, if there's an episode of some man taking advantage of a woman, that is a horrific crime that we are willing to sacrifice much of our personal freedom for. Personal freedoms and abilities and tendencies, and put all kinds of restrictions on just to make sure that that crime doesn't happen. So we really, really are serious about that. The society that claims it's serious about it is not willing to do anything about it. So I suspect that it's a big lie how serious they are.
Well, I think you're right, but from my perspective, I think it was a little deeper than that. I don't think it's just a the sexual harassment thing. I think it's the whole idea that you hit on in the beginning. I think stretches further in the society we are, and that's the idea that we have to restrain ourselves to anything, and because if we feel it, we have to do it, and it's not just sexually like you're talking about. I'm gonna give you an example. When I was a kid, way back 10 years ago or so, when I went to high school, there was not a single incidence of transgender. The word wasn't even there. And I use this as a good example because I think it's more in tune with what's going on today. Now, there were probably plenty of kids that went home and probably tried on their sister's dress. They might have done it in the mirror. But not one kid came to school in a dress. And I'm not just talking to me. I went to a small school. I talked to everybody I know. I had my cousins. No one had that. But because you know, listen, that was something you did in the privacy of your home, and you had to restrain yourself in public. You could not do that. Now we've built up such a system, and I almost, even though I made light here in my opening statement, don't blame the people on the left. You don't have to restrain yourself for everything. It's not just sexually harassing a woman. If you want to wear a dress today and call yourself a woman, and you're a guy, you can. And now you look at the schools, there are young boys going to school with wearing dresses. And you can't say, well, they can't help it. Well, they helped it when I was young. They didn't dress that way. And it's not just, I'm using that as an example, it's the same thing with sex. It's the same thing with everything, with the progressive things. There are no rules, and the rules are changed continuously. And if you've been to Hollywood, I know you've been there, you say you can't just blame Hollywood. The whole atmosphere in Hollywood is pervasive to this. Men, women, you say the women has to give her permission. It's not just the men in Hollywood. They live in a situation, and I go there a lot, where the women, not all of them, and it's not just sexual, are looking for the strong guy, the guy with the money, the guy with the credit card, the guy that can get them a job, and that's the way it is. And it is that way a lot in our society, but I think Hollywood demonstrates the largest amount of it. We can't just say, okay, so in Hollywood, the men and the women are going to be separate. I think that's a huge thing if you can go to that extreme, but it's the real problem is you don't have to restrain yourself from anything. Sex, money,
Right. Well,
anything.
that's what Hollywood is.
But I
That's
think
the whole nature of the
we
whole
look at that
existence.
as what's supposed to how society's supposed to be.
So
now.
Hollywood sets the tone for society, but the whole nature of what Hollywood is, I mean, since going back to the casting couch and the whole thing, I mean, 100,000 books have been written about
They
this.
say
and movies
Metro,
have been made
Golden,
about-
and they're all
Yeah,
at the casting
right. I mean,
couch.
everyone,
Jews, by the way, everyone knows.
everyone knows about this, and creating glamour and creating stars and the looseness of what people are and treating people like commodities, and they're cheap and peddling flesh, and all that stuff came from Hollywood. That's what it's all about. Breaking barriers in society, and everything that Hollywood stands for is emblematic of this society, because we take our cue from there, and therefore the whole thing is based on a falsehood.
It is a falsehood, but you can't, as you said, just blame the men. The reason why you're only hearing the few complaints that we've heard, listen, this is how it works in Hollywood. The reason you're not hearing the rest of the complaints is because they did get the job. They are big stars now. They have really nothing to complain about. They did what they had to do in their mind, and they've got this. So it's that's how it works there. We don't have to restrain ourselves. This is what it takes. This is what we're going to do. So I don't know. I love your solution. I think it works great in the Orthodox community. But can you? Obviously, don't you have to teach restraint before you have to teach absolute
Right.
prohibition? I mean, I don't know.
Absolutely. Of course you have to teach restraint. I'm just saying that the way to really teach restraint is to put up barriers.
No, I
Distance. Distance is the way to put up barriers. You know, once upon a time, here in Atlanta, they had boys' high and girls' high. That's
true.
They didn't go to this. These are public schools. These are public schools, and I would presume that they were offering the same level of education and opportunities on both sides of the coin. I would hope that they would. I don't see why they wouldn't. But yet, they put boys' high and boys' high and girls' high and girls' high because they saw it's not going to be really healthy for either the boys or the girls to have the in the co-ed classes and co-ed experience. Now, in our universities, you can't even request nowadays separate floors, separate rooms, things like that.
That's not true. You can if you feel like you're not safe and you need a safe space.
Right.
And you're triggered, you can. But that's for different things. That's not meant. If you're triggered, you can get any kind of safe space you want.
Too complicated.
And I'm sort of feeling triggered right now, so let's be careful.
Way too complicated for me. I don't know,
Right.
The bottom line here is that everyone is screaming about something that the entire society is focused on exactly the opposite. It is a society of predators. It is a society that is built on commoditizing, I guess if there is such a word, on commoditizing other people, on devaluing them, on giving power, unrestrained ability to power. We admire people that can do whatever they want because they're big and they're strong and they can do everything that they want and they get what they want. We make movies about women getting what they want. That's a big genre now.
True.
Powerful women getting what they want. Well, if you have powerful women getting what they want, then why can't you have powerful men getting what they want? So the whole society, it's all phony. Women shouldn't always get what they want, and men shouldn't always get what they want. People should learn to respect other people and put up barriers. In order to do that, you got to go right down to the core of the society.
Well, and it's true, but then they come back to the thing. Well, my issue with it is this society that we've built and we've created. How can you blame people if there are no rules? I'm a young kid that goes to school today. That is totally different than a kid that would go to school when I was in school, or way back when you were in school.
Yeah.
You don't learn that there are restraints and there are barriers and there are rules. You learn that, in schools today, that the things, if my kids went to a public school today, I don't know how they would have turned out. It's horrible. You have to have some rules, and I know obviously with Jews we have the Torah and we have things that you look at, okay, you can do this and you can't do that. I don't think you're allowed to even say that today in society, is that you can do this and you can't do that. And I know you're looking at just as a sexual thing, but I think maybe it's just the fact that we are a rule-less society. Right. Or we are a society that doesn't have stop. You can't go there. If you have that feeling, sometimes maybe we're given these feelings so that we can restrain ourselves.
Right.
Is that possible?
Right. Absolutely. What you're saying is that our society has taught us to pursue our desires regardless of what other people think. Well, if I'm going to pursue my desires, let's say I want to express myself in a certain way, maybe it causes hurt to my family or my friends or something, that doesn't matter. You have a right to pursue your desires. So now when you've got Mr. Predator and Miss Victim are there, but why all of a sudden now can he not pursue his desires?
And that's my point. If you're telling a man, and I know that he can restrain, as I was using as an example, he restrained it back when I was a kid, that he can now shower naked in a school, a boy, with girls, and he can use the and my point is, because he can't help it, you can't blame him. You forget that you are hurting the girls that are in the shower. You're hurting the society, and you're hurting what's going to happen to these kids when they grow up. And I just think that maybe it's a restraint issue, because we don't have to restrain ourselves or anything anymore. So how can you blame anybody, especially Hollywood, where they are the epitome of no restraint?
Right. So the bottom line is, the fact that all these things are coming to light, who is surprised?
Nobody.
Is anybody surprised? Should anybody be shocked? This is the world. And that's why we have to train our children. You got daughters, you have to tell them, you don't go alone anywhere with another man unless, if you do, you can expect. And do not be at all surprised if that person is going to try to do something to you and going to try to take advantage of you. Don't be shocked. Know about it in advance. Be aware in advance. Don't get started.
That's a good point. That's a little restraint could really change. Can change society. And I think if that could be pushed more than anything, you tell your daughters, you tell your sons what they can and can't do. Right. And just because society says you can do anything you want, I guess you have to take care of that.
If let's say if Mr. Weinstein has a big movie theater, a big movie production business, and he can make stars. If he found that every time he wanted one of those girls to come up to his apartment for a personal interview in his apartment, if he found that they were saying no, 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 you know what?
I'm with you.
He would still find a star from somewhere. He would just have to learn that he can't use them in order to...
And you wouldn't have that situation today. So it does go. I agree with you.
So everyone's got to get together. So the women have got to say, no, we don't go there. Not that I'm going to go into your private apartment, have dinner with you, drink a couple of glasses of wine, but I'm going to expect you to restrain yourself. Sorry, I'm not even walking into your apartment.
No, I-
We'll meet in a public place. I don't even know if we'll go out for lunch. Let's meet in a hotel lobby, and that's it. Where there are people around, and maybe I'm going to even bring my mother.
It's probably a good idea. With Weinstein, that might not have stopped anything.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how it help. Interesting point, and I think this is people need to think about this because I think a little restraint could really go a long way in a society that has none.
And the society, as we have it now, just can't be surprised. It is reaping the rewards of the seeds that it's sown.
Absolutely. Well, that's a good one. Should pass this one around. Maybe someone will learn something today.
Maybe.
All
Probably
right.
not.
Probably not. Though.
But maybe.
If we show some restraint, we'll keep this together. We'll perform another show. We'll be back next week. See what happens. Jeff the Rabbi.